Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I think we are live, and it's an honor for me to introduce this webinar with my thank you to the organization, to the Secretariat. I'm David Moser, I'm the Vice Chair of the ETIP PV, and the topic of today is to give us the chance to present you the results of the stakeholders consultation that the ETIP PV has done in the past, let's say, year and a half. And I will, if you can move to the agenda of today. So I will briefly explain to all of you what the ETIP PV is about, and then we will get into the core topic of this event, which is the presentation of the, as I said at the beginning, the results of the consultation, the ETIP PV vision, and also we will cover some interesting new policies that were announced this summer in terms of the future framework program. So what will come in Horizon Europe. But as I said, let me start with the introduction about the ETIP PV. So the ETIP PV is a platform, European Technology Innovation Platform. The Secretariat is funded to support the work of the experts, which are part of the steering committee and the working group of the ETIP PV. And the overall mission is to bring together industry research and policy representatives to develop and promote sustainable and competitive PV. So in the ETIP PV, we are always busy in, let's say, making sure that we listen to what all the stakeholders have to say to keep our vision, our mission updated. So the way that we are structured, we have a chair, Rutger Schlattmann from Helmholtz, and two vice chairs, myself from the Becker Institute, and Nora Adam from Baywa RE, and also at the moment with the help of Delfina Munoz from CANS. And we are structuring in a steering committee with around 35 experts from industry and academia, and working in six different working groups. Now I see 5 there. So the working groups are the manufacturing and cost competitiveness group. There is a group working on all the aspects of PV integration. So on buildings, floating, agri, on vehicles, and so on. The important aspect of grid integration, so the role of digitalization and the future role of, let's say, hybridization of PV and storage to increase PV penetration in the transmission and distribution grid. One group dedicated to PV technology, so efficiency, cost trends, and so on. And one group dedicated to sustainable, reliable, and social photovoltaics. The ETIP PV, if you can go to the next slide, please. We have several publications that you can find on the website. You will find very useful fact sheets, but also white papers and policy papers. All these documents are produced by the different working groups with the help of the experts. So if you are not involved in any of the working groups and you would like to be, just let us know and we can evaluate, let's say, how you could possibly support any of the running working groups. As I said, these publications are all freely available in the website. One publication that kept us particularly busy, I would say, in the past 2-3 years, because we had an initial version which was updated last year, is the Strategic Research and Innovation Agenda on Photovoltaics. So this is a document that was a cooperative work between the ETIP and the whole community, where we set research innovation priorities of PV, initially up to 2030 and then updated to 2035. If you are not familiar with this document, I really invite you to go and have a look at that, because it contains, let's say, short, medium, and long-term mission. Someone is complaining that the audio is not working. I hope everyone can hear me.
Me, it's working.
Okay, I hope it is working. Thank you to to make sure that I haven't spoke to myself for the past 5 minutes. So thanks for that. So yeah, if you're not familiar with this document, I really invite you to go to the website. This document was also a very important document for the co-program partnership. My colleague Thomas will go through that later on. Because after, let's say, defining the priorities for different challenges, in the next slide we will go through these challenges. The next logical step was to prioritize, let's say, challenges or topics for the very short, medium term. So, and this is the reason why we say that this document served as the basis for the co-program partnership of PV, which is known as ETIP. So if you go to the next slides, so the challenges that we cover in the strategic research and innovation agenda, they go from performance enhancement and cost reduction through the whole challenge related to lifetime reliability and sustainability. Challenge 3 is about the new application through integration of PV. Challenge 4 is about the smart energy system integration of photovoltaics, and challenge 5 is about socio-economic aspects. As you see, they mirror more or less the working groups of the ETIP PV. And finally, I believe, no, that was it. So this is all from my side for the ETIP PV introduction. So I leave the word to Thomas, who will take us through the core of this webinar. Thank you very much. And there will be, after the presentation from Thomas, there will be time for question and answer.
Thank you, David. And indeed, so over the past 3 years, there was quite an extensive work of requesting some inputs from the entire PV community, and I'm sure a lot of you have either directly in working groups or in the various workshops, surveys, and other consultation that happened with ETIP PV contributed to the publication that David mentioned, and notably the ETIP PV Istria. And the result of these consultations somewhat culminates into the European Partnership for Innovation in Photovoltaics, which is a very important program that was officially launched back in March 2025, and where the ETIP PV plays a very important role, and which shapes essentially the goals for PV in Horizon Europe today. So those of you who are currently preparing some Horizon Europe proposal on inverters or ingots are already participating in a UPPV goal. Then we also have the ETIP PV vision for the future of PV research and innovation, which is a quite important strategic document for the ETIP PV is going to be working in the next few years, and also quite interesting to consider as we are starting the process of defining the 10th framework program of Horizon Europe, which really will introduce a lot of changes in continuity, if you like. So we won't have many surprises on some aspects. However, the program is likely to be quite different, especially after the entire process. But maybe just to start with the European Partnership for Innovation in Photovoltaics, or UPPV, more informally. So the general objectives of it are really framed in the perspective of supporting the European industry for photovoltaics, and especially defending Europe's strategic autonomy when it comes to being competitive on the global market. So this feeds very directly into PV. Essentially, one of the very clearly stated objectives of the partnership is to facilitate the industrialization of innovation that is being researched in Europe, and at the same time also to make sure that PV can have an active contribution to Europe's competitiveness as a whole, as an affordable energy source on the market. So trying to address as well through research innovation barriers to market uptake of photovoltaics. Another aspect is to actively support the European leadership in an innovative and value-creating PV industry across the entire value chain. So really the partnership is addressing the 5 challenges, if you like, that David presented from the ETIP PV TRIA. So it's not only focusing, if you like, on the late stage of innovation towards new module technologies, for instance. It's really trying to look at everything from modules to deployment to obviously quality, circularity, etc., and to try to have a comprehensive, essentially, support framework for innovation across the value chain. And then another aspect which is at the heart of all the co-program partnership at the European level is to reinforce and better coordinate research innovation efforts across the PV value chain, especially between research institutes or academia and industry. So bringing a strong alignment between the priorities of these 2 types of actors, and obviously also having a clearer pathway for industrialization. Now, we've been talking quite a bit about the UPPV and overall co-program partnership. So the question is also, what are partnerships? And this is one that maybe not everyone here is totally familiar with. And so co-program partnership are a public-private partnership between the European Commission and stakeholders from a private sector. In our case, it's the solar PV sector, which jointly define research and innovation priorities within Horizon Europe for a specific priority. So in short, with European Partnership for Innovation in Photovoltaics, it's really about defining Horizon Europe goals for currently what is the realm of activities is the work program 2025 and then the work program 2026 and 2027 of Horizon Europe. And to do that, the ETIP PV really stands at the heart of this co-program partnership. So we have within the ETIP PV core decision-making body, which is the steering committee, which includes 30 experts from industry and academia, which are half renewed by elections every 2 years. So the next elections will be next May, if I'm not wrong. And then we have 5 permanent seats for the PV Industry and Research Innovation Association, so Solar Europe, ESMC, EUREC, the ERA PV Joint Program, and PVSyn, which are there to ensure that the decision taken by the ETIP PV Steering Committee in the framework of the co-program partnership are sufficiently representative of the interest of the entire PV value chain. Then we have ETIP PV working groups, to which some of you might already be involved in, which contribute with specific expertise on inputs requested from the steering committee, or can even propose some specific inputs. So that's true for the entire ETIP PV operation, but in the framework of the co-program partnership, for instance, we have had a request to the working groups to identify a short list of pre-selected priority topics on each of the working group priorities or expertise area to really shape a first selection of what could be the topic selected for Horizon Europe in the coming 3 years. And then the ETIP PV steering committee and further the co-program partnership board had a more granular selection of the topics according to the overall ensuring balance across the industry in terms of funding allocation, and also according to the priorities of the European Commission, which plays a very important role in defining where the efforts of the partnership should be allocated. And then another important body in the functioning of this co-program partnership is the Implementation Working Group on PV, which is the implementation working group to the set plan, and which gathers European member states, or rather Horizon Europe partner countries, to essentially define what should be the research innovation priorities for PV. And the IWG-PV is there to make sure that what is being proposed by the co-program partnership is reflective also of member states' priorities, because if you see on this graph, on this chart, what is then being proposed by the co-program partnership in terms of goals has to be validated by countries in Horizon Europe, because they are the one down the line who are funding the project, so they need to agree with them. So then more precisely about the partnership, it's been signed in March 2025. It represents a commitment of 240 million euros from Horizon Europe to PV research between 2025 and 2027. So about 80 million per year, which is about 10 million more than we had in previous years. So obviously it's not a game-changing amount, but still it's an important increase, especially in the framework of rather decreased or even stability of budgets for renewable research. So as I mentioned already, the implementation of the partnership has already started in 2025. What we have identified in the UPPV strategic research innovation agenda are the following goals. So you might already be familiar with some of the goals for 2025, which are on alternative silicon growth technologies for PV application, commercialization of perovskite PV and development of dedicated manufacturing equipment, which will be in February of this year. Novel inverter technologies and flexibility in PV systems, which is also currently open, and then extending the lifetime of crystalline silicon PV modules, which will also be in February of this year. And then to be considered for the work program 2026-2027, which where we will have a confirmation quite shortly of what are the topics that have been definitely included in the program. So we have long lifetime and optimized use of materials in recyclable, critical raw materials, free silicon PV modules, industrial equipment, processes, and materials for reliable and scalable tandems, production technologies for solar photovoltaics, industrial scale-up for integrated PV, improved system design for innovative PV applications, designing and implementing PV systems for industrial electrification, and then reliability, procurement-driven risk mitigation, and better system availability through digitization of residential PV systems, as well as sustainable and circular solar PV, so definition of life cycle assessment and social life cycle assessment methodologies. So all these goals have been identified as high priority topics for the PV sector. I invite you to go through the partnership SRIA if you've not done so already, because beyond the title of the goals, there's a more detailed text as well as a proposed budgets for the topics, a lot of interesting information that have been jointly defined also with the Commission. Now, moving a bit to the topic of the ETIP PV vision, which is another of the key publication of the ETIP PV, where there was quite a lot of mobilization of the PV communities via preparatory workshops, as well as preliminary and validation consultations. So we have a vision document, which is quite a short narrative type of document. So, not too challenging a read. Might not be technical enough for some of you. But yeah, essentially it's trying to have a clear picture of what the PV system will be looking like in the year 2050. And there, what the vision is doing is trying to understand, okay, where do we expect PV to be in terms of contribution to the energy system by the middle of the century? And there, the statement of the vision is that there's an expectation that PV represents about half of the energy consumption in Europe by 2050. And then to look at what this means in terms of market trends to get there, but also in terms of implication for the overall European economy. So if PV is half of energy consumed in Europe, obviously it has a major impact on macroeconomic trends and perspective for competitiveness of the European industry, for instance. Then we also have the question of where PV is deployed, what does PV system look like by the middle of the century? So typically exploring the topics of digitalization, of sector integration, and also sector coupling. So this obviously ties into the electrification, whether directly or indirectly, of the sectors of the economy, whether transportation, but that one is already well underway, but also heating and cooling, industry, etc., which come with additional technical challenges. And then finally, it's also about looking what the PV industry is looking like in 2050. So in terms of, in the perspective of Europe's drive towards a greater degree of strategic autonomy, and also a renewed focus on industrial policy and ensuring a degree of resilience in value chains, especially for clean energy technologies. So some of the key messages of the vision. PV is about 50% of final energy consumed in Europe by 2050. It is a central actor, especially of energy system stability. So that's quite important because obviously if PV is 50% of final energy consumed in Europe, we know that there will be a very important variation in supply between summer, between winter, but also obviously night and day. So integration with various storage solutions is quite important to consider also in this type of document. It is playing an important role in the competitiveness of the European economy. Already today, PV is the cheapest form of electricity generation in Europe. Obviously, we are expecting further improvement in the cost of both PV and other enabling technologies, so typically storage, until the middle of the century. And then it's also at the heart of energy security priorities, which are quite important concerns, especially at the moment where we've had we have a lot of discussion about what Europe should be doing the next decade, the next 2 decades, in terms of ensuring its geopolitical security when it comes to energy. And obviously, PV plays a key role because once a PV system is installed, it's obviously generating for 2, 3, maybe 4 decades. So that's electricity that is not going away. Then we have other messages which are a bit more looking at less at the contribution of PV to the economy and how PV looks like by the middle of the century. And there we see really an evolution that is really first policy driven. So we are seeing a drive towards industrial policy at European level, whether at EU level, but also national. And this is something that is also happening globally. And that is really driving a focus towards expanding production capacity for strategic sectors. And their PV is clearly identified as one of those sectors, especially considering the contribution it has on energy generation today, but also even more on the long term. Then when we look at what are the conditions for sustained competitiveness of PV manufacturing in Europe, so obviously beyond market creation in the first phases to enable initial competitiveness, there is continuous innovation that is really an enabling condition. Widespread digitalization is another very important factor. And then the last one, which was really highlighted throughout, or the last two ones even, which were really highlighted throughout the entire series of expert consultation during the last 3 years of the ETIP PV activities. It's a question of reliability. So this is, for instance, right now a core discussion when we look at the market uptake of perovskites. They need to be reliable, have a sufficient lifetime to justify essential investments. And also the question of circularity across value chain, which is a big concern from European actors inside the PV industry, but also a concern that is increasingly being voiced outside the PV industry, and therefore that is important to answer to maintain the social engagement and positive vision of PV by the European society. So yeah, some takeaway from this vision process, which were quite interesting, is for those of you who have already read the previous ETIP vision, you might see it's quite different in not necessarily in content, because the technical priorities and a bit where we see PV get to by 2050 has not really changed that much. But really it has evolved greatly in terms of framing. So 6 years ago, we were, as a PV sector, as the ETIP PV, talking mostly of PV as a climate solution, and that should be promoted for climate reasons. Today, we know this is still the case, but the argument for PV is not anymore necessarily a climate argument, because as we know, it is unfortunately not the most engaging policy priorities for policymakers. But it is now PV is an economic and a security argument. So this is really something that has shifted, not only in the way we see ourselves, but also in the way PV is contributing to the urban economy and to the energy system resilience and reliability. And then, obviously, in this framework, we have also seen a change at the European level in the way we are considering trade and also the production of clean energy technologies. And now, as well as cost efficiencies, there's also this question of strategic autonomy, which is a major EU priority. We have seen it with the Partnership for Innovation in Photovoltaics, and this is obviously reflected in the ETIP vision. Now, moving to the last point on the 10th framework program, which some of you might have gone through already. So we have currently Horizon Europe, which is running until 2027. And so what comes after it? So we will have a renewed Horizon Europe framework. And this was not an obvious proposal, because at the beginning of 2025, there were some ideas that programs like Horizon Europe could be merged into a wider competitiveness fund that has been proposed by the European Commission for the next multi-annual financial framework, which is a 7-year period from 2027 to 2034, where the EU budget is allocated. However, what emerged in the past few months was really that innovation is a crucial factor of competitiveness, and Horizon Europe being a very successful program altogether, it would be a threat to the success of the European Commission's plan for improving the competitiveness of the EU economy, to destabilize too much the Horizon Europe program. So what has been decided instead is to frame the program with higher policy priorities of dedicating 3% of the European GDP to research innovation. So really marking an increased ambition, because I think right now we are at about 1.5% as an EU economy. So clearly not in the 3%, and especially behind a lot of the geopolitical blocks that we are in economic competition with, So typically China, the US, even Japan, etc. That's a very high priority. Then there's the question of the scale-up and industrialization of innovation, which is a much stronger priority. Connection to industrial policy, which is at the heart of this competitiveness fund, is much stronger than in the previous framework program. And finally, and that's probably the most tangible change, doubling of the EU R&I budget, so doubling of the Horizon Europe budget overall, which translates into then 4 pillars, which are excellent science. So this is typically well, everything that is very low TRL or blue sky type of research, or financing PhD grants, etc. So where we have 44 billion that are allocated. Competitiveness and society, which is allocated with 76 billion euros. And this is where the Horizon Europe calls for PV typically fits. So this is everything related to innovation action projects, etc. And so, yeah, that's where we would expect to see PV calls. And if the European Partnership for Innovation is continued after 2027, because this will be evaluated in the coming years, then this is where the calls would be also located. Then we have a pillar 3 on innovation, which is some of you may be familiar with the European Innovation Council, which is a program that was introduced in the previous framework program, and that is really something the European Commission wants to expand in the next few years, and to essentially make evolve into something a bit like a DARPA style program. So something that accompanies startups or innovation market uptake in a very lean and efficient way. And there's very clear incentives into the communication of the European Commission to have an improved connection as well between this pillar 2 and pillar 3. And then we have pillar 4, which is European research area. So things related to research and technology infrastructure, for instance, or international cooperation around research. Now, in terms of timeline, we have had the proposal for Horizon Europe regulation by the Commission in summer 2025. Over the next 2-3 years, we will have a discussion. I mean, the European Parliament and European Council will adopt their respective position on what the European Research and Innovation Framework should look like after 2027. And then by the end of 2027, we will have compromise between these 3 positions, between the Commission, the European Parliament, and the European Council, to agree what exactly is going to be in Horizon Europe. So in the next 2-3 years for the ETIP PV, there will be some mobilization about shaping this program and making sure that it is equipping the PV research innovation sector with the right tools to make sure that we're able to deliver the ETIP vision, the ETIP PV 3-year priorities, etc. And then before the end of 2027, obviously this will be adopted, and there will also be a definition of the Horizon Europe work programs. So essentially the specific calls that will be then presented from 2028 onwards. And then we will have the start of the next framework program in 2028. Sorry for the typo. That will then run until 2034. So that's quite a relatively long timeline if we consider it from today, but it will come quite quickly with. We will also have the work program 26-27 in the meantime, etc. So it will be quite an active period for research and innovation policy at the EU level. Now, a quick overview on how this will change, because I'm a bit running late. So we have both a degree of continuity. So if we look at the proposed regulation from the Commission, we see that the format of Horizon Europe will be very similar to what we have today. We still have a focus on cooperative research. Funding rates are broadly in the same range as what we have today. So up to 70% for for-profit organization and up to 100% for non-profit organizations. We have maximum times to grant, which are 7 months. So this is more or less about what we have today. And also what we see is a greater focus on partnerships, but this is in a relative continuity as well with what we had today. So the UPPV is a new partnership. There's been an increased interest into this form of priority definition with industry. However, obviously, this is not a guarantee that the PV partnership will be continued, but we can expect that if we've had a successful implementation of the first 3 years of this partnership, there's no reason not to continue. Then in terms of an evolution that we see, some of those are a bit intangible at the moment, and we'll have to wait and see for the more in-depth discussion and also the first implementation document. But there's a priority on simplification and ease of access. So we could expect to have maybe different application procedures, maybe simplified also application process for Horizon Europe. We also see stronger interaction between Horizon Europe and the Competitiveness Fund, which is something that is not well defined at the moment. First, the Competitiveness Fund is not defined entirely, but we could expect to have requirements, for instance, for stronger exploitation priorities with direct plans to feed into the Competitiveness Fund some of the key exploitable innovation from specific Horizon projects or things like that we already somewhat have in PV proposals with Innovation Fund. Some of you might have been involved in such types of plans. Then we have an expanded focus on the Innovation Council, which is expected to grow and take a stronger role in the overall framework program. And also we have a new type of schemes, which are the moonshots, where the idea is to have very specific objectives. So we have moonshots and, well, bringing Europeans to the moon, for instance, and there it's about enabling this objective via innovation. So this is not extremely well defined at the moment. We've had missions in the past, so to be seen what is the difference with those in terms of allocation of funding, etc. Now, in terms of what this means for European PV research innovation, so we have a framework that is really targeting the scale-up of innovation. We'll have bigger projects, stronger focus on industrialization. There's also a greater focus across the framework program on crowding in private funding. That's, for instance, the case with the EIC, Green Industrial Deal, which will be in the 26-27 work program, which I've not mentioned, but which already introduces this type of new hybrid goals. Collaborative research beyond PV will also probably be an important factor for PV R&I. So, for instance, we see moonshots in defense, AI, digitalization, or quantum, where PV could also be involved. So that's something to also consider. And then there's a question of how the framework program will actually be implemented and whether we will need to be relearning Horizon Europe or whether the expertise and essentially what has been working so far will be maintained, or whether we'll be needing to have something that is new, maybe much more efficient as well in allocating funding. So there's still a lot of unanswered questions that will be answered in the coming years. So now, looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Thomas. I dropped a line in the meeting chat, but there are no questions at the moment. Maybe one remark from my side. This is something that you touched upon, but I think it needs to be stressed even further, is that as ETIP PV, we are also trying to make sure that we are active at member states level, because, for example, the overall discussion of the Framework Program 10 will have to go through member states' opinion in the Council and not only. So we have seen, for example, the positive impact of the co-program partnership in the implementation working group. The implementation working group is a working group composed by 11 countries now, not only from the EU, but also associated partners. There are sharing experiences in terms of funding schemes and initiatives at member state level. So this is already a very good result, I would say, of the co-programs partnership in showing member states that it's important to continue investing in PV or even increasing the level of interest in PV. There is a question is for you, Thomas, do you expect Innovation Fund to remain in its current form in the European Competitiveness Fund era? From Greg.
That is a very good question. I would expect the Innovation Fund to continue to evolve because we've seen already very significant evolutions in the past few years. And I would expect that because one important aspect of the Innovation Fund is it is not a research innovation policy, it is climate policy. And we will likely have a revision of the climate framework of the ETS regulation basically in the coming years, and this would be the opportunity to have a more in-depth revision of the Innovation Fund and potentially answer some of the concerns that have come from the clean energy industry regarding the efficiency of it in supporting innovation.
There is another question that we can maybe try to answer together. What are the key challenges facing the implementation of R&I measures in the solar energy sector? So it's not related of the, let's say, the R&I measure, but the implementation. So I don't know if you want to answer to that, Thomas. From my point of view, is to get funded. That's probably the key challenge to start with. But maybe I'm asking if Yolita to try to explain a little bit better the question, because what do you mean by implementation? Is once the project is funded, what are the key challenges, or is it related on how to get it funded? So maybe if you could explain the question a little bit better, that would be much appreciated. And I don't know if there are any other questions that are popping up from the chat. But let's say maybe to go back to the question is that about the implementation. I think that the prioritization, the co-program partnership is allowing us to do, hopefully goes also in that direction. So by agreeing, it's not necessarily an easy process, but if the sector can agree on where to prioritize the funding, because funding is not unlimited, unfortunately, but the prioritization of the funding should also allow to have projects with a higher impact, because the wish we have is that, of course, this is an output of the stakeholder consultation, and the new call for proposal that will come out in the future will have been selected by the sector as of high priority. So that should somehow answer the question. There is another question. So is there any plan to include fire safety as a research topic in the R&I agenda? I've just checked the SRIA and it's not even mentioned. I believe that is a topic. This, yeah, I agree. I agree with you. It's not explicitly mentioned, but it's under, let's say, safety in general. We have looked a lot into, let's say, bankability and risk. So this is definitely one of the priority for the downstream sector. So there will be calls on how to de-risk the investment in the PV sector, and it's obvious that anything that can have an impact on the business model, and not just economic, but also, let's say, the safety part will have a room for it. So I think he's right. We will take that into account. Probably we should be more explicit on that, but it is included. Yeah.
And maybe to complete, one thing that is in the UPPV SRIA and might not be can already announce included as such in the work program, but there's an ongoing discussion with the Commission on how to do that efficiently. Is definition of a common LCA methodology for PV R&I, and this might go. I mean, the idea is to really have clear framework on how to evaluate innovation. And that would include not only environmental impact like carbon, etc., but also reliability, quality, etc., to make sure that we can test according a bit to the same criteria all technologies and systems to essentially avoid to have to define these new requirements at every new projects, and to have maybe some challenge with comparing breakthrough from one project to another.
Let's maybe wait a few seconds if there is any other, if there are any other questions, otherwise we can slowly conclude this event. Doesn't seem to be the case, but if you were not entirely happy with our answers, let's say, please drop a line, send us an email, and we will try to answer as best as we can. So yeah, I don't see any other questions coming up. So I would like to thank the Secretariat for organizing this event, this webinar. I would like to thank Tomal for your presentations, including let's say, the most recent evolution of what will come next in terms of the Horizon Europe framework. And thank you very much for attending. As you see in the chat, if you have any question, don't hesitate in contacting us at info@etip.pv.eu. And with that, I would like to say goodbye, and I will see you in the next events. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Bye. Bye-bye.